For anyone who is maybe watching this on the replay, there, turn some light on. Hey, I'm Sarah, and this is a place for people who are questioning their faith, deconstructing their faith, and just want a place to talk about it. So yeah, a little background about me. I grew up Protestant, Christian, evangelical-ish. And I started questioning my faith when I was in my mid-20s. Hey, Kyle. Hope you're doing well. I brought my giant mug with me today. Hi, Naz. Happy 4th. Hey, Creed. Hi, Chip. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that you're at work. Ekta, hello. Hi, Bailey. Hi. Good to see you guys. Right now my microwave is broken, and so I've been heating my tea like actually with a kettle, but it's always way too hot. Hey, Minute. Hi, Max. Minnie, hello. Oh, well, it is still the 3rd for me as well too, Creed, but someone said happy 4th, so. Hi, Walt. Well, I hope you all are doing well. Don't want that to fall. For anyone who's new, hey, I'm Sarah. This is a place for people who are questioning, yes, going old school. Although I will tell you, I have been chastised for not making my tea with a kettle. I guess it is about that time to switch it to follower comments only. Give me just a sec. Hi from Kentucky. Yeah, I sent Justin a message. Hopefully he shows up at some point. I think he might be busy tonight though. I'm not really sure. Welcome back, Minnie. Yeah, hopefully the filter helps. Yep, exactly, Chip. About the time. I made a video today about hell, like the hell doctrine, and it was on my mind. The Lord Doug will be here. Maybe, I don't know. He has not told me if he's coming or not, so we'll see. But yeah, the idea of like, for Christians who grew up with this idea of eternal torment and eternal hell, how it really desensitizes you to the suffering of others. And I think, we're seeing a lot of those negative effects, which is really unfortunate. Not you, Creed. Actus says, do you know here in New England, not only do we put ketchup on our hot dogs, but we split the bun on the top rather than the side. What? Blasphemy. Okay, well, bye, Chip. I agree with you that a loving God wouldn't make hell. I can't understand how a God that is loving would do something so awful. Dr. Joe, hello. Welcome. We were just chatting about hell. Yeah, right. You don't put ketchup on a hot dog. Don't be ridiculous. Hi, Jordan. That's what relish and mustard and onions are for. Chin says the hell thing isn't even in the Bible. It's largely the creation of Dante in his poem Inferno. I agree that a lot of the imagery seems to come from that. There are a few like there's some kind of language that sort of alludes to it, but it's not very clear. So I agree with you there. Yeah. Bailey says, if the wages of sin are death, why does sin put us in hell, which is eternal suffering? Absolutely. Right? If the wages of sin are death, well, we're all going to die, so we're all going to pay those wages. Yeah, and I think there's a, like the reference to a lake of fire. Hi, Jory. Theoden says, the concept of hell requires the concept that God would rather punish someone than just permanently destroy their souls. It means he wants to torture them. And something I think that happens more recently, like in more recent discourse and theology, is this idea of, well, no, God's not sending you there. You send yourself. Like, you're choosing it to take the onus off of God, like to relieve him of any responsibility. But I think that's a cop-out. I think it's to try to make this terrible concept more palatable. They have tacos. I know, Boots. It's awful. I wish I had something wise to say about it, but I don't. Kyle says, I've always thought of hell wasn't a place of burning fire, but cold, blank darkness. There is contrasting metaphors in the Bible. So it is, one place you can hear it described as darkness and fire. Just think what Mr. Rogers would do. I love Mr. Rogers. Bye, Jordan. Bailey, have you thought about emailing him? Like doing electronic conversation? It wouldn't feel so, maybe not so intimidating. Oh, that's interesting. Chin says, in Dante's poem, the deepest part of hell is extremely cold because Satan is flapping his wings. Oh, the Norse hell is cold. Hey, Maverick, you... the philosophy I find irritating. Yeah, the whole you have to have an uncaused caused thing is a presupposition. You always end up with special pleading. Oh, this is really interesting. Naz says, had this conversation with a coworker. She's agnostic and views it as communal. Hell is just a way to put people in a place to do good rather than bad. Some people need structure. What an interesting way of thinking about it. I've never heard anyone consider it that way. Matthew, hi. Hi, Kelly. Welcome. So I am an agnostic atheist, and I used to be a Christian, and now I'm not. So um, I have this channel for people who are going through that process, and want a place to chat about it. Hi, Dethroned. Yeah, Chin, I think the question always sort of goes back to why is there something instead of nothing? And that question applies to the universe, and it also applies to any deities that you might have. Why does a deity exist at all? Um, and I don't know. I don't think anyone knows. What makes you want to stop believing in God? So I actually didn't want to stop believing in God. Um, it was something that happened to me that I fought along the way. I really tried to hold on to my belief, and I was actually heartbroken to have lost it. Thanks, TJ. I appreciate it. Hi, Skeptic. Well, Robert, hello from Scotland. Becky, no, I wasn't taught wrong. Justin, hello. Thank you for the super chat. Justin says, have you considered looking at the trees though? And Minutemen, thank you so much for the super chat. Minutemen says, I'm sending money even though there are demonic people here that enjoy ketchup on hot dogs. I see you, Justin. Praise Doug and his holy consort, Sharon Stone. Look, we don't do ketchup on hot dogs. It's just, you shouldn't do it. Well, thanks, Dethroned. And I mean this sincerely, that I'm very happy that your faith has brought you comfort, and support. Is it a debate about facts or a struggling of personal relationship? So, I mean, I have a whole video, Kelly, if you want to kind of hear the backstory. It's on my FAQ playlist. Ehab, hello. Maverick, why is your God exempt from your rule? Becky, you don't even know what teachings I was exposed to, though. And this idea, Becky says, meaning you were exposed to the wrong teachings regarding faith. The thing that, like, my other big disagreement with that is, so when I was a Christian, I spent huge amounts of time just alone with God, like reading, just directly reading the Bible, studying the Bible, praying, waiting to hear God's voice. So much, like literally 2 hours every day, I did that. And so if I was so wrong, like I had the wrong teachings, Like, wouldn't an all-powerful God want to correct me and tell me the right thing when I was so sincerely seeking? To me, that seems so cruel that a God would watch me read his word and pray to him, and yet somehow I have the whole thing so disastrously wrong. I feel like no matter what I say, there will be a Christian who tells me I'm doing it wrong. Ezer says, why spend so much time alone? Why not talk to anyone? So no, the the 2 hours a day was in addition to the church services, the growth groups that I was in, the Bible studies. I didn't do it all alone. The thing is, Kelly, I genuinely thought that I knew God. Hi, Camden. Kelly says, I had this issue when I used to read the Bible to find a reason to believe. I found God when I took a leap of faith and believed before I read. So the thing is, what you're describing there is a confirmation bias. So you decided it was true before you even read what was in there. Marduk, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Am I still a Christian? No. I haven't believed in God since 2009, so it's been a while. Bye, Creed. God asks for faith, not evidence. Why would a God you haven't really put all your faith in answer you? Well, again, I did have faith. I was completely devoted to God. So, but separately, God absolutely spoke to people in the Bible who didn't have faith. So he's perfectly capable and willing to do so. And what a weird expectation for a relationship. Like God's expectation is you totally surrender your whole life to him and completely have faith in him, and then maybe he will deign to communicate to you. It doesn't really seem like a relationship. Maverick says, so would you rather believe the world came from an infinite regress or God? What I would rather believe is irrelevant. Like, I'm trying to figure out what is. I mean, if it's what I'd rather believe, well, heck, I mean, I'd rather believe that, we're just gonna join an all-loving energy when we die, and everything's gonna be okay. I mean, that's what I'd rather believe, but that doesn't mean it's true. Camden, no, I'm not on the devil's side. Oops, what did I press? Danny says, are you saying there is no God? I'm saying I'm not convinced there is a God. So I don't believe in God. However, I cannot prove it. Like I can't prove that there is no God. Which is why I consider myself an agnostic atheist. And I would never tell anyone, hey, I'm 100% sure you should believe like I do, because I don't think I can ever be 100% sure. Stephen says all belief is a choice. All right. Stephen, I would like you to choose to believe that I am God. I'm not. But if all belief is a choice, you could choose to believe that, right? No, Becky, I'm not saying I don't understand God. Yes, I do know what a null hypothesis is. Are we going to have a statistics discussion? Dethrone says, love sometimes can be tough, but I think the main way love is felt is warmth and compassion for others. You know, and I've been saying dethroned, but it's dethorned. My apologies. And I do think that there is so much overlap between Christians and atheists and people of other religions in that so many of us do care about each other and we want good things for each other. And we experience love and compassion and empathy. And I do think we have a lot in common. Oh, no, Dr. Joe says, I had to accept the null hypothesis on my dissertation research. Ah, no. Kelly says, the bias you spoke of applies to your viewpoint as well. So, I mean, on one hand, yes, I'm a human being, which means that I have biases and I see things through my own lens. So first, yes, I have biases. The specific bias that I was talking about is when you read the Bible, how are you determining that it's true and that it makes sense and then that it's describing a loving God? And so many Christians learn about God from another source, like their pastor or a friend, and they create this idea of what God is. And then secondly, they go read the Bible. And so they already have this idea of what God is. And then they just, everything they read in the Bible, they take these ideas and sort of force them to align with their existing idea. But I think if you read the Bible trying to learn what God is like, you will watch his actions in the Old Testament, and it's really hard. It's really hard to think that's a good God, unless you do a lot of mental gymnastics. No, Satin, I don't believe in the devil. Yeah. Kelly says, did you ever read the verse, who is the clay to say to the potter, why did you make me this way? Yeah, I've actually read the whole Bible several times through. And I think that is really abusive language in the way that Christians use that. Saying, well, who are you to question God? No matter how bad he acts or whatever bad things happen to you, you never get to ask any questions. You never get to say, hey, this seems unfair. And, we're not inanimate objects. Like, we are not clay. We are not, a dish, right? We are creatures that think and feel, experience pain and fear. And when things are terrible, I can't understand why it wouldn't be okay to say, hey, things are actually terrible. Jake says, we fear God and we love God is something that was said in my house a lot growing up. Dad was also elevated to man of the house, and it wasn't weird to me that I feared him because love was fear. Yeah, I think that's true of a lot of Christian households, especially the closer you get to fundamentalism. I need to plug my phone in. 1 second. Okay. Sorry, this will just take a sec. All right, we have power. Oops. Oops, sorry. Don't do that. That's the lamp. Okay. Sorry, y'all. I'm very low tech, so I'm just doing this from my phone. Good and bad are qualities. Without both, you lack the ability to compare and contrast. So what about like heaven? Or are you saying that in order for us to know that God is good, there has to be evil? Like God's goodness is contingent on the existence of evil? Checkers is not around here, but Ruby is. Hey, Rubes, you want to say hi? Hey, big girl. There were some fireworks earlier, and she was pretty iffy about it. Hey, big girl. Nope. Naz says there are two types of people on Earth, those that charge their phones to a healthy level and those that live on the edge. I live on the edge. Logan says, so never mind Christianity, do you believe in a higher power at all? I don't, actually. And again, I don't believe in one. That doesn't mean it's impossible that a higher power exists. So there might be a higher power. I don't have an evidence to believe that there is one. Oh, hi, Kyle. Kyle, thank you so much for the super chat. Kyle says, dang it, I missed seeing the bunny. Show again, please. Well, you didn't miss the bunny, you just missed Ruby the dog. But yes, I'm happy to show her again. This is Ruby. She's a Great Pyrenees. Hey, Rubes. Ruby. Hi. She's very unbothered. But that's Ruby. Oop. Well, don't knock over the lamp. Okay. Ruby says hello. Oh, you're so welcome, KB. Pluto, empathy and logic guide my morality. Danny, I know what an RCT is. Is that what you meant, or are you talking about something else? Michael says, so if there's no higher being, then what or who or what caused the universe? I don't know. Again, it's that big question of why is there something rather than nothing? And again, I think you have to ask that question of a God too. Why does a God exist instead of nothing? You know, I don't know. Logan says, thank you for being open. So this is just my perspective. The Big Bang, the fine tuning of the universe constants that allow us to exist, and love itself shows me that there is a God. I understand that. And to respond, like I don't want to talk you out of it. I can tell you, you know, why those things are not convincing to me. You know, the fine-tuning idea, I don't see things as being fine-tuned. You know, if you are talking about our planet, there are trillions and trillions of chances for a planet to be, you know, the right distance from the sun. And a lot of, like, you know, when you talk about these constants, the way that we do the math to describe our universe, we are just describing the universe as it is mathematically. But if the constants were different, then the universe would just be different. You know, I think a lot of it is like when you shuffle a deck of cards, the odds that you shuffled the deck in that exact order are absurd. It's like 1 in a trillion or something. I mean, it's just absurd odds. There's no way, you know, for you to ever even do that again. And so you'd say, wow, I shuffled the deck in this order. There was a 1 in trillion chance it happened. It must be God. Well, no, you shuffled the deck and this is what you got, and that's that. You know, it's, so I think there's this sort of, I don't know, survivor bias maybe is the right term when looking at that. Yes, I was a born-again Christian, not just by name or association. Manny says, I tried to say that empathy and logic guided my judgment once, but someone said that morality needs to be subjective if it was made by humans, and it needs to be objective. So whenever we're talking about is morality subjective or objective, I think sometimes we're using those words differently. So when I say morality is subjective, that doesn't mean there is no morality. I think when I say that, sometimes Christians say, oh, well, then anything goes, and that's not what subjective means. But I think often what you're looking for is, okay, who makes the rules? How do I know what's right and wrong? And there is comfort in someone else telling you what to do, right? Well, God's in charge. I just obey what God says, and that's easier. But that is actually still another type of subjectivity. For a moral to be objective, it would have to be not contingent on anyone's mind or anything's mind, and God is included in that. You know, it would have to be something like gravity. You don't have, no mind has to create the idea of gravity for gravity to exist. And we don't have anything like that for morality. So morality is something that we are internally creating. And so because of that, it is subjective. However, we can create objective rules for us to function in as a society. Oh, okay. I see I have a super chat for $2, but the message is deleted. So I don't know what that is. Thank you for the super chat. Hi, Brandon. So I consider myself an agnostic atheist. Vemi says, God never wants to torture people. Satan does. You do something bad, your dad has to punish you to teach you. Oof. So it gives me an icky feeling when people compare hell to a parent punishing a child. When a parent punishes a child, the goal is not suffering. The goal is teaching, right? You want them to learn and do better next time. And yeah, they might find the consequence unpleasant, but you're not trying to make them suffer, I hope. But hell is just suffering for the sake of suffering. There's no growth, there's no doing better next time. And so it's just a totally different concept. Kyle, thank you so much for the super chat. Kyle says, wouldn't your morality also depend on your geographical location? In as much as your religion and culture depend on your geographical location. Yeah, so I mean, I think there are just some like structural traits that most humans have based on the way that our brains work. So the majority of humans experience empathy and can use logic. I understand that there are exceptions, but generally humans can experience empathy. And so regardless of cultural differences and religious differences, for the most part, humans think that hurting people is bad. And obviously there's a lot of nuance there, and you can see differences in cultures, but big picture, hurting people is bad. And so we as humans have a lot of overlap in our moral codes, even when our cultures are different. Ryan, thank you so much for the super chat. Ryan says, so nothing is objectively wrong. So yeah, this is where we have to clarify what we mean by objective. So objective in the sense that a law exists the way that gravity exists, then no. But that the same is also true for Christians. Christians just say things are right and wrong because God says so. And that's still not objective. However, this concept of right and wrong, those are human concepts. And so we can, communicate harm or lack of harm and generally come to agreement with each other about what's right and wrong. And we can certainly objectively measure if you've caused harm. So there's that kind of objectivity. I know that's maybe not a satisfying answer. Khan, thank you so much for the super chat. What are your thoughts on Spinoza's God? I don't know what that is. Can you tell me what that is? Tangled, I would love to visit India. That would be lovely. Logan says, if the speed of light was different in even the most unnoticeable way, life would not exist. So Logan, life as it is right now might not exist, but life under different parameters could exist. So that's what I'm talking about when I was giving you the example of shuffling the cards. So if these constants were different, that's just shuffling the cards again. And to quote, oh my gosh, what is his name? Well, in the movie, his name's Malcolm, right? Life finds a way. Oh, okay. Thank you, Khan. Khan says basically God is nature, the universe, everything. So yeah, that's such a different even like definition of the word God. This idea that we are all energy and that we're all connected and we're all kind of parts of a whole. I mean, in some respects, I can understand that, you know, in that we all are, we all function through electricity, you know, and we are made of the same kinds of atoms and elements. And, you know, I don't know what that means in terms of that God actually having awareness and consciousness. And I'm not sure how that fits in there. Hi, John. Hi, Cheesy. I am familiar with them. Yes. Ryan says, but that means one can always disagree with your moral suggestions and claim that something terrible is correct. I mean, that can happen, right? People do terrible things, and people do disagree with each other about what is right and what is wrong. So yeah, I mean, I think you're describing reality. I think you're describing the world as it is. Michael says the only reason why objective morality can only exist if God exists is because, unlike us, God's morality does not change, but ours can. But God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So, Michael, by arguing that, that means that every action that God takes is always morally good, right? Every single thing that God has ever done is always morally good, regardless of the culture, regardless of that's how they did things back then, regardless of some other context. If God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, every action God takes is always morally good. And you run into a problem there because you have to read through the Levitical laws, the Mosaic laws, and there's some pretty terrible things in there. And now you have to say that those are good. Ekta, thank you so much. Ekta with the super chat says, I wish theists would stop flooding every space. Yeah, it's interesting trying to figure out how do you have a conversation about deconstruction without it turning into a debate. And to be fair, it's like when theists ask me questions, I am answering them. It's but I do think it begs the bigger question of why are you like why come into this live that isn't designed for that. Ooh, what did I just press? Stop that. Kelly says, you're judging God from a human perspective. Yeah, I'm a human. That's all I've got. And the thing is, Kelly, you are judging God from a human perspective too. If you think God is good, you have judged him to be good from your perspective. It's still a judgment, even if it's a positive judgment. We need a secret handshake. Pluto says, we care for our lost sister. I will tell you, Pluto, the majority of Christians who engage on my lives seem like they are here to argue, and that if they can just show me how incorrect I am, they will win. But if you're doing this out of care, like you don't know me, so it's hard for me to think that you care about me. You don't know anything about me. But if you want to say, hey, I'm coming from a place of care, then trying to argue theology is the last thing you should do. You know, if there's someone you care about and you're worried about them, you get to know them. You know, you figure out what their life is like, how they got to where they are. You actually connect on a deeper level. And you can't change anyone's mind until you've done those things. But if you just come into a live, argue about theology and leave, that's not care. That's just wanting to be right. I agree, Logan. You can't get to know someone through a live, which is why I find that comment to be frustrating. You know, you're right. If a Christian says, hey, I care about you, I want to change your mind, coming onto a live and arguing theology is not a way to do that. It's ineffective. Matt, I was a deeply devoted Christian for 20 years. It's not that I don't want to commit myself to him. I was incredibly committed. Michael says, so every time God made a decision that we see as bad, there was a reason behind it. So, like when God made a law that if a woman didn't bleed on her wedding night, you should stone her to death. Like you have to say, yeah, that was good. That was moral. That was a good thing to do. It was moral then, it's moral now. And I cannot see that. Danny, if you're interested in my like backstory, I have an FAQ playlist, and yeah, like my whole backstory is in there. Ivy says, you were not devoted. Ugh. I could list out how devoted I was, but then I'm guessing you would still criticize me. So I'm not going to justify myself to you. Yeah, I've read a lot of C.S. Lewis. Na says, that wasn't God, that was men writing their viewpoints. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess if depends on what your view of the Bible is. Many Christians believe that it is the Word of God. But if you don't believe it's the Word of God, then yeah, we have totally different questions to ask. Danny, I'm a physiologist. Ivy, if you're trying to demonstrate caring, then please take the time to get to know someone before you just dump judgments on them that are objectively false. Hi, Godwin. Ivy, saying I was never devoted is a judgment. Like that comment that you left, that I was never devoted, you don't know anything about me. You don't know how devoted I was. Well, thank you, Pluto. And Pluto, I do have a lot of videos that will give you that background information. And if you do want to continue a conversation, Pluto, TikTok is a better way to get a hold of me. I have the same handle over there. Kyle with the super chat. Thank you, Kyle. Kyle says, Mr. Justin needs to put his autograph on his store. I will buy it. Well, Justin, I guess it's time for you to start selling autographs. You don't believe in downloading Chinese spyware. Okay. Well, I guess you're just limited to my videos on YouTube then. Danny, you're welcome to send me a DM over on TikTok. I'm happy to talk to you about it more. Am I using my experience to gain fame? I love that you think this is going to make me famous. Oh, man. Oh, yeah, you're reminding me about the glue. Thank you. So Michael, I would have to see conclusive evidence to believe in God. Kyle with the super chat. Thank you so much, Kyle. Kyle says, oh my God, I'm going to buy his book immediately if he makes one and be there at a book signing. Are you going to write a book too? I mean, to be totally just like vulnerable with you guys, I would love to write a book. It would be so much fun. I have done some writing before and it would be really awesome, but I have to figure out like what I would even have to say that would be valuable enough for people to actually buy a whole book of. So I don't know, but yeah, that would be really cool. Justin says, so then they think famous pastors are bad. Yeah, it's really interesting. Like if someone uses their Christian beliefs for fame, is that good? Or is that bad too? Yeah, I believe you, Bailey. I know, Herb, hang in there. Agion says, hey, was wondering something real quick. I've really been trying to break from religion recently, but I've struggled so much feeling wrong or guilty. How can I get past that? You know, I would really recommend the organization Recovering from Religion. They don't push you to believe one way or the other. They have a lot of resources. They have a lot of support groups. And so Recovering from Religion, that's the name of the organization. I think that would be a great resource for you. Wow, Kyle, thank you. Kyle with the super chat, thank you so much. Sending a super chat for fun. Thank you. I'm very honored. Yeah, you're so welcome, Agion. Ooh. Joseph says, why does someone need to recover from obedience to God's laws? Joseph, I don't know if you'll do this, but if you actually care about people who don't believe, please take into consideration, yeah, why would someone need therapy? Why would someone need to recover from being in this experience? And actually listen to people who have gone through it. Please listen to people when they try to explain to you why, unless you just wanted to be mean about it. But hopefully you actually want to learn. Danny, I created this channel for people who are deconstructing. So to Joseph's kind of point, you know, when you go through the process of questioning your faith, it is so lonely and isolating and painful. And it's so isolating because of the way Christians treat you when you are questioning. And, you know, I had to go through that process all alone. It was back in 2009, so, you know, social media didn't even exist really. And so I had no one to talk to about it, and it was terrible. And so I want people to have a place to come and talk about it, you know, and I don't need anyone to believe like I do. I don't claim that I have all the answers. I don't claim that I know for sure anything. Like, that's why I say I'm an agnostic atheist. So my hope is for people to find some more community, because that's one of the more painful things about leaving your religion, is that you lose your whole community, and you have to kind of start over, and it's hard. Well, thank you, Michael. I sincerely appreciate the thoughtful conversation. Godwin, I'm sorry, Godwin, thank you for the super chat. Godwin says, what Christians say they are the only true Christians and why? You know, it's interesting. I have never met a Christian who themselves say they are not a true Christian. Every Christian that I've ever spoken to believes that they are a true Christian. And many Christians have different criteria for who else gets to count as a true Christian. Well, I'm glad you're here, Minnie. Is it fair to say that Christians are a certain type of way when there are many different types of Christians? Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Christianity is very diverse. I will say that if you are in any kind of group, and you start to doubt the core belief of that group, you will probably be isolated from that group, whether it's any religion or, I don't know, a running club or anything. So part of that is just human behavior. Daddy, thank you so much for the super chat. Daddy says, people leave religion for the same reason they leave the gym: inconvenience avoidance. Abstaining from sin is hard, just like exercise. So, the idea that people leave religion because they are inconvenienced is objectively false. Like, we actually have data on why people leave religion. And so your assertion is objectively false. As someone who was a Christian for a long time and who exercises a lot, so many of us, when we were questioning our faith, were deeply heartbroken to even have those questions. And we did everything we could to keep believing. And I'll also tell you this, like, my lifestyle isn't really different from when I was a Christian. It's not like there was this one big sin I really wanted to do and darn God was keeping me from doing it. It's not the case. I'm the same person. I live a really similar life. I think saying things like that make you feel better, because it allows you to feel like, I am tough, I am strong, I do the hard thing, and those wimps over there, well, they're not as tough as I am. And so it's a way for you to elevate yourself above others. This is interesting. Danny says, not in my church. We love doubters and people who challenge our faith. And then Michael says, the only true Christians are ones who have never doubted. So even right now in this chat, we have very different definitions of what makes someone a true Christian amongst Christians. Not really different. Identify the difference. Daddy, are you hoping that I'm gonna list, here's all the sins I committed while I was a Christian and here are the sins I'm committing now? Because I'm not doing that. Oh my gosh, Kyle. This is an insane amount of super chats. I mean, wow, this is incredibly generous. Hi, Gaia. Yeah, sorry. It's hard to keep up with all the comments. What do you want to know about hypertrophy, Danny? Well, hey, Dogster, I'm glad you stopped by. Someone says, God didn't hurt you, Satan did. There's a lot of issues with what you said, but I don't think either one did. But you can check my FAQ playlist. No, daddy and a caddy, I don't think you're asking in good faith. I think you've already decided what you think about me, and you're wanting me to confirm your presuppositions, and I'm not going to be vulnerable with someone who's not coming from a place of kindness. Um, the underlying mechanism for hypertrophy is actually really debated. So there are multiple hypotheses for what actually is like at the cellular level causing hypertrophy. And I could tell you multiple hypotheses, but we don't actually know, not really. Bye, Ajian. Well, good luck on your drive tomorrow. Michael, I don't listen to Frank Turek very much. I have been unimpressed with a lot of the reasoning that I have heard. I actually have a video. It's old. If you, I don't know where it is, but it's on my page where Justin and I are responding to Elisa Childers and um, and Frank Turek. It's on there somewhere. Daddy says, I'm actively looking for world idea nullification. I have no idea what that means. Can we agree that hypertrophy is caused by cellular damage? Actually, no. So this idea that you create micro damage for muscular change to occur is actually one of the hypotheses that have been proven incorrect. You don't need to damage the tissue in order for it to grow. What you really have to do is stimulate the recruitment of satellite cells and hormones like IGF-1, growth hormone, which will increase IGF-1 to like stimulate the proliferation of new protein in the muscle. So no, actually, you don't have to cause damage. I have heard of Cliff Nechtel. I've actually done some response videos to both Cliff and Stewart, and I find their brand of apologetics really frustrating. They use arguments that only existing Christians find convincing, and I don't think they really understand another perspective. My presumptions identify 3 lifted burdens. So, Daddy, I explained to you why I'm not going to do that. Again, I'm not going to tell you like my innermost thoughts, my like deep, vulnerable stuff, because I don't think you're having this conversation in good faith. Do you believe that hypertrophy is real? Sure, I can measure it. Yes. I have no idea, Hugh, actually. I think it's supposed to be turned into a metaphor. Look, Daddy, I don't believe you. Kyle, thank you so much. Kyle says, Deconstruction Zone is having a fundraiser tomorrow. Come on by and have fun. Yes, if you don't already follow Justin at Deconstruction Zone, highly recommend it. Justin is super educated on like actual biblical scholarship, and so I absolutely would recommend. Yeah, definitely go follow Justin. Danny says, but you can't tell me how it works, so why do you believe in it? So I can measure it. I can do experiments to at least understand conditions that increase it, even though I don't know all the physiology behind it. So I can watch it happen. I can measure, I can actually take an ultrasound or even an MRI to measure the volume in your muscle. So experiments, evidence, that's why I believe in it. Thanks, Justin. Justin says, don't be fooled by Sarah's modesty. She's the big brain here. Well, not when it comes to biblical scholarship. Bye, Yab. Minuteman says she doesn't put ketchup on her hot dogs, so that automatically makes her smarter. Well, it does mean that I grew up in Chicago. Why would you care to make a channel to help people away from faith if you don't know them? So I'm not trying to help people leave their faith. I am trying to help people who are in that process. So I am a generally empathetic human being, and I care about other human beings. And I think having a place to kind of be yourself and express your questions is a good thing. Oi says, would love, oh, there we go. Would love complete Abrahamic religion review one day. So, if you're interested, Justin and I have a series right now on my page that is going through the Bible, and it's mostly just like me asking Justin questions. And so you get a lot of Justin's knowledge. Like we're still in Genesis, so it's gonna take us a while. Francis, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate that. What is your favorite flavor of potato chip? Cheddar and sour cream. TTV says, why is no one considering the trees? Marianne says, so what is the purpose of life? My very favorite answer to that question is a Kurt Vonnegut quote. And he says, the purpose of life, no matter who is in charge of it, is to love whoever is around to be loved. I like that. Ketchup potato chips? No. Ew. Right, Noah? I know, I love that quote. Michael says, if there is no God, what is love? I'm so sorry that song is in my head now. What is love? So I don't think love requires a God. I know, right? Now it's in everybody's head. So I guess I don't know how to answer that, in that I don't think you need God to experience love. Yes, Dulcinea says Vonnegut wrote Sirens of Titan. That's where that quote is from, the book Sirens of Titan, where the purpose was life to build a nickel-shaped part to get the treff, oh my gosh, I can't even say it, back to their planet. Yeah, the actual like fiction plot of that book drove me crazy, and I hated the book the first time I read it. I was like, I hate this book sucks. But to get to the end and get to that answer, I really did find meaningful. So you're not worried about hell. I'm not. I truly, genuinely don't think it exists. And I don't think a good God would create such a place. Oh, I've never had all dressed chips. Does your family know you are atheist? They do, yes. Yeah, Minnie says it's freeing not to live in fear of hell. If you're interested in why I no longer believe, I have an FAQ playlist. And so I have a video that says why I left. So, Miriam, this idea that God isn't forcing you to be with him, and that if I don't love him, I'm somehow automatically choosing hell, just isn't true. I mean, that would be like me saying, look, you can choose to be with Zeus if you want to, but if you don't choose to be with Zeus, you have to be tortured for eternity. And since you don't believe in Zeus, I'm sorry, you chose to be tortured. And you would probably say, what are you talking about? I don't believe any of that's true. I'm not making that choice. And so I think that's kind of an unfair thing to say. Whew, the Yeti says, when you're in a bad situation, you will pray to God. That is a gross thing to say. One, I haven't believed in God for 15 years, and many bad things have happened to me since then. But two, like, what does that say about your God? That he wants something terrible to happen to you so that you're so desperate you'll believe in anything because you need help so badly. That's terrible. Yeah, this is a good way to put it. Briley says, there's no explaining God's choice to create hell. God could have created a completely harmless eternity for non-believers. He didn't. Yeah, I agree with you. Ekta, thank you so much for the super chat. Ekta says, you're choosing to be in the sewage lake. You could be safe on my raft if you just give me sloppy kisses forever. It's your choice. I'm blameless. Yeah, the idea of love me or suffer. Marianne says, you not believing is your free will not to choose. No, it isn't. I didn't want to stop believing. Not believing was not my choice. I did everything I could to keep believing. My desire was to keep believing, and this happened to me. So no, that was not my free choice. No, I was not forced. Marianne, I'm going to give you an example, and this is just a metaphor, but think about when a kid believes in Santa, and no, I'm not calling God Santa. This is just a metaphor. But when a kid believes in Santa and loves Santa and is so excited for Santa, and they hear something downstairs and they look around the corner and they see their parents stuffing their stocking, that kid wants to believe in Santa. They love Santa, and they now have seen something they can't unsee. And in an instant, their belief just disappeared. And there's nothing they can do to force it back. Like, once you see your parents stuffing your stocking, you can't just choose to believe in Santa anymore. And so to say that, like, no, you chose to stop believing in God, it's the same emotions. Like, again, God and Santa are not the same, but I can't force myself to believe in something. Danny, I hope that metaphor helped you understand that. Do you have live discussions at all? I do on my TikTok on Saturday nights. So Marianne, I'm just giving you an example of a person believed a thing. They wanted to believe that thing. When they saw evidence, their belief, it just dissipates. They didn't choose to stop believing, and they can't choose to keep believing. No one forced anything. It's just how the brain functions. Isaiah, I just answered your question. JS says, the Santa analogy is perfect for showing that belief is a response, not a choice. I like that. That's a good way to put that. Oy, that's the devil tactic to deceive you. That's even worse. That means that I'm saying, God, I want to believe, help me believe. And Satan is somehow so powerful, he's able to take over my brain and make me not believe. That's wild. And that would make God awful for giving Satan that much power. All right, it is midnight here. So I do need to call it a night. Yeah, creating your own enemy is crazy. Um, Kyle, thank you so much. Kyle says, I thought Deconstruction Zone had a video showing how Santa and Jesus are the same person. I think he had a debate topic that was similar to that. If you want to get a hold of me, the best way to do that is on TikTok. So I have the same handle over there, and I do check my messages over there. So if you have TikTok, you can find me over there if you'd like to message, or you can leave some comments on videos. I usually check those, not always, but usually. Wow, a marriage proposal. Um, I will be live on TikTok throughout the weekend, but then here I will be back here on YouTube on Tuesday. So I'm doing Tuesdays and probably Thursdays now. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate your time. And I hope you all have a great rest of your evening.